Oh,
Hey, what's going on, Champ Squad? Insanity, back with another Apex Legends video, here in Season 23. So it goes without saying, this season has been characterized by the rise of the support legend class, with legends like Newcastle and Lifeline ascending to the very top of the hierarchy after receiving several buffs this season. Just to quickly review what these were, they include increased movement speed while healing, doubling the healing amount for small meds, faster revive speed and health regeneration after revival, and receiving a mobile respawn beacon on teammate deathbox and crafters. That's over 5 pretty substantial buffs the support class legend got in a single season. Needless to say, nearly every team's now running a support team meta with Lifeline, Newcastle, and Gibby. So I recently made a legend guide for Newcastle, who I still think is probably the best overall legend in Apex Season 23 in the average player's hands. But right alongside Newcastle, at the very top of the legend ranking, is Lifeline. And especially in the right hands, she might just be the very best legend in the game, especially with the highest ceiling and skill gap. A top Lifeline who can stay alive and quickly reses on her teammates is really a force to be reckoned with. In the right hands, she's probably better than Newcastle, especially with all the rework she got to her kit this season. So today I'll be covering my best tips for maining Lifeline. I'll quickly review the updates she got to her kit, and then break down specific tips for her ultimate, passive, and tactical abilities. I'll also cover things such as perk selection and a few bonus tips for maining Lifeline. Without further ado, let's get right into it. So Lifeline really got 2 series of buffs this season. She got both a series of upgrades that impacted the whole support legend class, as we mentioned earlier, as well as a specific rework to her kit this season. The overall buffs, which we discussed, really increased movement speed while healing, doubling the healing amount for small meds, faster revive speed and health regeneration after revival, and getting a mobile respawn beacon on teammate death boxes and crafters. But along with these overall legend upgrades, she also got specific enhancements to her kit in pretty much every way. Her tactical drone now has increased rage and allows for player assignment and tracking, compared to the past where the drone restricted you to a single static position while healing and required you to be right next to your teammate. You can now assign and handle the drone a lot better. Her ultimate also got a complete change from the previous support package, which was very static and did not help in any gunfight, to a barrier ring that allows for fast healing inside and provides a much more useful application in gunfights. Not to mention her passive rework that gives her a mobility option and much smoother movement than she had in the past. Across all these different changes, Lifeline got a ridiculous number of buffs this season, somewhere in the order of 8 to 10 by my count. So let's start with some tips for Lifeline's ultimate, as I think it's probably the biggest change to her kit, and it requires a bit more strategic use than some of her other abilities. So Lifeline's ult does provide you and your team with on-the-go cover, in the form of a shield ring where inside heals are accelerated. There are a few key use cases where I highly recommend using this ultimate ability. The first is if your team is caught out in the open without any nearby cover, you can use the ring to get you and your team some useful instant cover while you calibrate your next move and reposition. Especially if one of your teammate gets down in the open, it's a great time to pop the ult and stick the res inside the ring. Going for a Lifeline res on a teammate that's out in the open puts them at pretty high risk of getting shot out, so popping the ult and then resing gives your team some protection to get back on their feet and then hit some quick heals inside. Just beware that with Lifeline's ult being open from the top, you are still vulnerable to a few counters, such as Gibby and Bang's ult, as well as incoming nades. For these reasons, you can't just rely on Lifeline's ult as an all get-out-of-jail-free card. There are some situations to be aware of where you want to be careful about using it. Generally, using her ult inside is a bit safer, since you don't have to worry about certain counters, like Gibby and Bang's ult, but you're still susceptible to Maggie's tactical, as well as nades. Another huge tip for Lifeline's ult is to always run a shotgun, especially with how common Lifeline's ults, Gibby bubbles, and Newcastle shields are this season. Shotguns have had a big revival in Season 23. Pair this with Lifeline's small hitbox. Running a Mastiff or PK is a great way to take advantage of her ultimate by peeking in and out of cover while taking shots. My favorite loadout this season is to run the Mastiff, since the dual Mozams were nerfed last season, and you can pair this with an AR like a Flatline or an R301. Another tip for Lifeline's ult is to still be tactical about when you use it. You don't want to just spam her ult the second you take a little bit of damage. Try to wait to see if one of your teammates or both of them get knocked before you deploy it, or if you're in a really vulnerable position out in the open, then you can use it for some instant on-the-go cover. So next up, onto Lifeline's passive ability, which does give you the ability to glide with her drone, essentially giving Lifeline a movement option in addition to all her other buffs this season. So her passive gives you about 4 to 5 seconds of gliding, and then you'll be brought back to the ground. The most important element to using the glide effectively is to find ways to bring momentum into your glide to maximize distance. You can do this easily by jump sliding into your glide off of an object. Compared to just gliding without building momentum, you'll travel way farther if you slide jump into it, which will also make you harder to shoot out. You can also maximize distance by gliding off of other legend abilities such as Octane's Pad or Pathfinder Zipline. Also note that as soon as your feet hit the ground with Lifeline, your glide charge will reset and you can use it again instantly. This differs from other abilities like Valk's Jet, which does require a certain timer to charge and be used again. So sometimes breaking up your glides by getting your feet on the ground for a few seconds can be a good way to travel longer distances with Lifeline's glide. So next up, onto Lifeline's drone tactical, which got several huge upgrades this season to its handling, including being able to assign the drone at a distance to teammates and locking onto them to follow them around. As a Lifeline, one of your key priorities should be maintaining the health of your teammates and monitoring it as much as possible so that you can immediately assign them the drone when it drops. Since syringes heal double and you also have the drone on command, you really don't need to carry medkits anymore with Lifeline. One thing to note is that you can pre-assign Lifeline's drone to your teammates before a fight, and it will heal them if they take health damage during that fight. I recommend saving the drone until the health drops, just so it doesn't go to waste if you don't take damage, but there are some scenarios where this could be useful. Also do note that Lifeline's drone has a pretty far distance range this season, so even if your teammate is relatively far from you in a gunfight, you can still assign the drone from them when they take damage. Prioritize your teammates who have less health during gunfights when you can, and always be ready to supply the drone on command. So next up, we'll quickly cover perk selection for Lifeline, as there's definitely a set of perks that are the much better option compared to the others. So for the first upgrade, you'll definitely want to select the Extended Glide perk. This will increase your movement ability and allow you to glide a lot farther. I do recommend this perk over the extra battery slot, because with the buff Lifeline got this season, you can get by with shield cells more than batteries, since it gives you double. For the level 2 perk, I definitely recommend the Tactical Cooldown Reduction over the Enhanced Drone Distance. You can already assign the drone a pretty far distance, so I recommend the drone cooldown so that you can assign it more frequently to your teammates in every gunfight whenever they take damage. So some quick bonus Lifeline tips for those who stuck around this far. Tip number 1 is to run the Mastiff or the Wingman with Lifeline. I think when you pair these weapons with Lifeline's ultimate and her small hitbox, she just becomes an absolute menace. You can quickly peek outside of your ultimate and either shotgun pump or wingman your enemies for a lot of damage. Another suggestion is to run a team comp with Lifeline that includes any other support legend, especially Newcastle, Conduit, or Gibby, because then your team becomes a complete menace, fully fortified against any enemy. You'll have multiple legends that can spam res abilities and keep bringing your team back from the dead. There's a reason the ranked meta this season involves stacking support legends, but this is also true if you want to win more pubs. So tip number 3, probably the most important tip for any Lifeline guide, is to not overextend or play too aggressively with Lifeline. If possible, at all costs, you want to avoid being the first person knocked on your team. Your number one job as Lifeline and as a support legend is to stay alive and quickly stick reses if you need to bring your teammates back. So make sure to really lock in with good positioning in gunfights, not overextend, and try to avoid being knocked first at all costs. So that's going to wrap it for a quick Lifeline guide this season. If you guys enjoyed it, also check out the Newcastle guide, and I will be coming out with a few more legend guides this season, including Bangalore and Conduit. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.